Hey everyone, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the more hidden dangers in psychedelics. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize can be a real problem if you continue to use psychedelics, or really more broadly, if you are kind of a spiritual seeker, you're getting deep into meditation, getting deep into any spiritual practices. There's a hidden shadow side to all of this that I want to discuss today that is really under discussed, but is actually a significant problem. So let's go ahead and get into it. But first, before we discuss that, I want to just introduce myself in case you haven't seen me or any of my videos, you don't know who I am, what the context of where I'm coming from is. My name is Dave. I'm a coach and hypnotherapist in the psychedelic space. I help people with preparation, integration, support, transformational coaching, kind of around their journeys. And I've been in the psychedelic space, as a psychonaut myself for 30 years. I have a long history of psychedelics, and this is my calling. This is my area of passion. Psychedelics and personal development, and the intersection between the two is what I love to think about, what I love to talk about, what I'm always kind of focused on. So if you're interested in this kind of content, welcome. Happy to have you aboard for the conversation. You're in the right place. And if you really love this content, please do consider giving a thumbs up, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff to let the algorithm know that this channel is here and valuable to people like you. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what this hidden kind of shadow aspect to psychedelics is that a lot of people deal with, but not a lot of people are talking about because it's important. Okay, so what is this mysterious kind of shadow aspect of psychedelics that I'm talking about in the first place? Let me be a little more clear, a little more specific with you guys. So essentially the problem that I see, and I've seen this, for decades now, and I still see this online all the time. The problem that I see is that a lot of people, when using psychedelics, get to a place where they are more aware than they have the internal capacity to feel resourced and comfortable and safe and be able to integrate and absorb and process whatever it is they're becoming aware of. So you'll see people who become super hyper aware of their issues, hyper aware of their traumas or their, what was wrong in their family system, or hyper aware of the problems in the world around us, hyper aware of all the threats going on in our environment all the time, hyper aware of all the criticism online and whatever it might be. People become hyper aware of all of these problems. And on psychedelics, that can become clearer and more amplified and more present. And all of a sudden we go from trying to tune out problems to being totally tuned into them. But if we haven't, again, developed our capacity to feel well-resourced at the same time, it creates problems. So in the work that I'm trained in, a real basic way of understanding transformational work of all kinds, but whether that's kind of therapeutic transformational work or spiritual transformational work, what have you, essentially there are kind of two components that need to be brought together. And when they're brought together in the right way, in the right sequence, we get transformation as an experience out of that. And so essentially what those components are is we have kind of problems on one hand, and we have resource states or resources on the other hand. And when we bring the resources and connect them to the problems, it transforms the problems and clears the charge, and we have a transformational experience. It's kind of a real rough, oversimplified way of putting it, but I think that kind of makes it clear enough for the purposes of this conversation. And so when we take psychedelics, or again, when we go really deep into meditation, this can happen, or we go deep into learning about therapy and, trauma and family history stuff, or we go deep into spiritual practices that amplify Kundalini or whatever it is, you go into one of these healing, awakening, kind of transformational experiences like that. And what it can do is it will put you in touch with new information. But if we are not developing our ability to, again, maybe sit with all of that and be present with it and be mindful of it without reacting to it, if we're not getting good at self-regulating and grounding our body and coming back into our senses and into ourself and feeling safe, if we feel alone and isolated, we don't feel well-resourced in terms of safe, loving relationships around us, or we don't feel well-resourced in terms of We have a hard time bringing compassion or love to what it is that we're witnessing or seeing, or acceptance or open-mindedness or curiosity or playfulness. There's all kinds of really powerful positive resource states that can be used to kind of help buffer and create the ability to really absorb challenging information and still feel present and safe. Right. But without those resource states there, if we're not really well resourced, what will happen is we'll just get overloaded and we'll just get anxious. We just become more and more aware of more and more problems. And I'm sure you've probably been at some point in your life had the experience of, problems stacking up to the point that it's like your thermometer just goes through the roof and you're just stressed to the gills, and you get overloaded, and then you have some sort of a triggered trauma response, whether that's to shut down or whether that's to go into full fight or flight or what have you. We want to be avoiding this with psychedelics, obviously, right? And in general, when we're doing transformational work or healing work or personal growth work, we don't want to be, in the red. We don't want to be maxing ourselves out to the point that we are confronted with more than we can tolerate and absorb and work with and work through and process. And so it really, really makes the difference. And this is really starting to get into what I'm seeing is perhaps a new approach to personal development and kind of a new modality that I'm kind of starting to articulate and formulate that I'll be sharing later here on the channel, is this idea of really developing out your resources first. I mean, if you think about it, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel comfortable, then going and diving into your deepest traumas and your deepest issues or all your deepest existential dread or what have you, it's not going to go well. You need to be able to feel like, oh, I can sit with these fears. Oh, I can tolerate the body sensations of stress. Oh, I know how to get my body out of stress and back into safe. And I know what it is to feel safe, and I can get myself into safety first before I start thinking about these things that have been issues or problems or pain points for me. And it's so obvious when you think about it, and yet it's something that's so underdone, both in therapy, sadly, and also just for people who are just trying to work it out outside of therapy. So this is really my message to you. You want to, if you find yourself in this position, if you find yourself more aware of problems, then you have the capacity to deal with it, and you're finding yourself overloaded and stressed and overwhelmed, the move is to start to work at stretching and developing and strengthening the muscle of feeling good, of feeling safe, of feeling present, of feeling peaceful and comfortably embodied, of feeling compassion, of feeling, able to be with whatever the confronting, challenging information is, right? This is, it's so obvious, like I just said, but it's such a missing piece for so many of us. And so I would encourage you to do whatever that's going to be for you, whether that's meditation. What's going to bring you peace? Is it going to be meditation? Is it going to be exercise? Is it going to be socializing? Is it going to be self-regulation exercises? Like, I made a playlist on my channel, which if you search through my playlist, you'll see a bunch of self-regulation exercises. Is it going to be, just about approaching it in little pieces, not overloading your plate with too much information? There are a lot of ways to go about this, but the idea I want to impart to you is that you want to be maintaining this balance. So if you're too aware of the problems and you're over amplifying the problems, then you're going to be out of balance, and then you're going to be overloaded. If you're too resourced and you don't have any problems, out of the two imbalances, that's going to be the better one. That's really my message here. You want to be mindful of this, because this is beyond psychedelics. This is actually a life problem, right? The more you become aware of your environment, of the people around you, of the threats around you, the way things work in this world, with that awareness comes awareness of both the good and the bad. And so this is just one of those things in life in general. We want to be, as we're learning and developing, we want to be expanding our ability to feel well-resourced in the presence of challenging information. Last thing I want to say about this that I probably should have said earlier, but I'll just kind of tag it on at the end of the video here, is that this often happens for people who are maybe a little more heady, maybe a little more intellectual, maybe like to learn. And there's this common issue that I'm always talking about, that I'm always kind of like, I'll forever be kind of like trying to clarify for people. There's this assumption that when I know more about my issues, then my issues will get resolved. That when I learn in more detail what the problem is, that's going to equal transformation. And psychedelics being drugs of awareness first and foremost, you will be more aware probably to some degree of whatever the issue is. But knowing about the issue cognitively, intellectually understanding something is not at all the same thing as feeling released from its grip inside of you. Not at all the same thing as releasing it and letting it go and transforming it and expanding beyond it and really resolving an issue. That's something that happens more at a deep unconscious level, if you want to use kind of a hypnosis metaphor, or at a body level, if you want to use kind of a somatic metaphor. It's something that doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the being, let's say. When resolution happens, it happens in the being. And so if you're one of these people who's kind of prone to using psychedelics to learn more and to try to understand, and you're trying to figure out your issue, and you think that when you have it all figured out, it's all going to be better and solved, I want to, kind of be a little blunt here and say that's unlikely to be the case in my experience. As someone who's myself very kind of intellectual and heady and thinker and kind of went down that road myself, I can tell you from firsthand experience that hasn't yielded fruit for me. And when I look at other people who are similarly patterned, highly intelligent, very intellectual, want to understand the mechanics of things, want to know the root cause, the reason why, fixate on the problem, fixate on what happened and what the narrative is, my experience is that generally those people, even when they know that information, don't get the actual transformation. So the message here is to cultivate balance, and specific to cultivate your ability to feel resourced enough to be in balance with your intake of whatever the transformational thing is, whether it's psychedelics or, again, meditation, yoga, what have you, pranayama, whatever it is. And that's really my message to you. So please watch out for this in your own relationship to psychedelics on your own path. And if you want to learn more about how to be well-resourced, how to feel resourced, I'll be talking about it more here on the channel. It's also something I do with my clients. Bottom line, if you're wanting a transformational experience in life, you want to let go of an issue and move past something, safety is the fundamental nervous system requirement first in order to do that. So if you don't feel safe, if you feel overloaded, that's your first order of business. Start to learn how to create more of a sense of safety in your own nervous system. So without further ado, I guess we will leave it there for now. And of course, this will be, I'm sure, an ongoing conversation, but I just want to kind of share this angle because it's such a bummer. It's so sad to me to see people really struggle with being overloaded from psychedelics. And it's kind of like drinking from the fire hose of cosmic information, but all the cosmic information is overwhelming and overstimulating and too much and threatening. And there's not a balance there. So make sure you're developing that balance. All right. Much love to you all. Take care. And I'll have a new video for you guys sometime in the near future.